Overall today, smartphone video has gotten really good, and in particular iPhone video. But there are aspects of it that really do annoy me. As someone who's been shooting iPhone videos since 2011 or 2012, when I started this YouTube channel, I can tell you that the iPhone video, the video itself, has gotten considerably better over the years. There's no question about that. However, there are still issues that are maybe inherent to smartphones that haven't been fixed or that need a lot of work. So today I want to talk about the most annoying aspects of iPhone video, and that's whether you're shooting casual, just hobbyist vacation videos, or trying to make a short film or doing more professional work. And number one for me, in particular on iPhone, is the over-sharpened look of the video. That's just inherent to the way iPhone creates the images, and there's not much we can do about it. And by the way, I'm not here just to complain. I want to give you solutions, or at least sort of quasi fixes, to help make it not look bad or make it work. And for this one, the best way to eliminate or reduce the sharpening is to use a filter when you're shooting, like a Pro Mist filter or a softening filter of some kind. And then the other option would be to soften it in post. You can reduce the sharpening in post depending on the editing app you're using. But over-sharp images not only look terrible, but they instantly tell someone that you're shooting your video on a smartphone. One caveat would be on some Android phones, you can turn sharpening off or down quite a bit, but not on iPhones, and that's what I'm talking about today. Another really big issue shooting on smartphones is the low light performance, and in particular with a wide or telephoto lens. And that's kind of the key. If you don't shoot on the main standard lens on the iPhone and you're in low light, your images will be noisy. There's just really no getting around it. Now, they've made improvements with noise reduction. And then again, the main standard lens is the way to go because it has by far the largest sensor and again, the best low light performance. However, if you want to shoot a wider shot, like an ultra wide or a telephoto, the way around that is to use external lenses. And I talk about that all the time on my channel, whether that's from ShiftCam or B-Script or Moment or whoever. Use external lenses if for no other reason to have better low light performance, although you can also get more shallow depth of field by using the main sensor and putting a lens on it versus using the built-in tele or the built-in ultra wide. But again, I hope as phones improve, the next generations will be better in low light. They have improved quite a bit over the years, but they still need a lot of work. All right, and now to get even more geeky here for a moment, but a huge issue, a very annoying issue, is called dynamic tone mapping. Now, Apple has made improvements here as well. However, it's still there. And what dynamic tone mapping does is it basically adjusts the exposure without you doing it. Even when all settings are locked, the phone will adjust the exposure, which is bad. We don't like that. Now, using a third-party app, you can change it to local tone mapping or global tone mapping, depending on what your shooting situation is. Although global tone mapping tends to be the way to go. Again, I don't want to get too in the weeds and too technical here, but in apps like Filmic Pro, etc., you do have control over that, and it can give you better results depending on what you're shooting. But one tip to help avoid it is to not shoot in high contrast scenes, especially in low light. Imagine shooting a bright car or a white car in a lower light situation and another car passes the frame or a person passes the frame. Your image will just bloom a little bit, and it's super annoying. But now dynamic tone mapping is a good thing when used properly because that is what gives the phone such great dynamic range. But when it auto adjusts even subtly, when you have everything locked down, that's no good. And speaking of dynamic range, one really annoying thing with the iPhone is its HDR mode. Now, don't get me wrong, HDR can look great depending on the project. And on the phone, when you shoot in HDR, you're shooting 10-bit video. Now I'm talking about the native camera app. However, if you've ever edited HDR, it can be a pain. And if you're sharing clips in HDR, it can also be a pain. In other words, it won't look right when you're sharing those because it'll look overexposed depending on the display you're watching it on. If you're watching on your phone or a monitor that has HDR, then it looks okay. However, more times than not, we still work in SDR today and people view stuff in SDR. And so the iPhone defaults to HDR. What I do is turn that off. I don't use HDR. I use SDR, and that's what I edit it in. So if you shoot in HDR and then work in SDR like most of us do, you have to do a color space override, which again gets really technical for many people. So my advice here would be to just shoot in SDR. Don't worry about HDR unless you have a specific HDR requirement. And if you want to shoot 10-bit, just use a third-party app like Filmic Pro and shoot in ProRes or even HEVC. A huge annoying thing for me is using cinematic mode and not being able to lock the white balance because, I mean, really, if you're shooting video and you're moving the camera around at all, your white balance is going to shift and it looks terrible. So Apple really needs to add white balance lock to cinematic mode. They have it on the native camera app, the regular shooting video, but they don't have it on cinematic mode. I gotta believe that's gonna change in the upcoming phones. But that is something that is so annoying to me that I often don't use cinematic mode, especially again if I'm moving the camera, or even if you're putting your hands in front of the camera. If you're doing a product demo, the color will shift and it's just super, super annoying. So Apple, if you're watching, please give us the ability to lock white balance in the future versions of cinematic mode. Thank you. And one final annoying thing that I know drives everyone crazy, and there's been a rumor there was a software fix on the way, but it's never happened, at least not to my knowledge, or if it has, it hasn't fixed it, and that is the dreaded green dots in the flares. There is really no easy way to eliminate that. There are a couple ways, but they're not really that great of a fix, and that is, number one, instead of shooting a big wide lens when you're outside, in particular at night, shoot on a longer lens. Now, if you're on a longer lens, don't go into the light source. What I'm talking about is shoot past the light source so the light doesn't hit your lens. That's really the main way you get these flares, of course, is the light hits your lens. And so if you use a longer lens and you don't get pinged with the light, that will eliminate the problem. But sometimes, of course, you want to shoot on a wide and you will get the hits depending on the scene or the scenario. So really, and again, especially at night, you want to avoid street lights or any kind of lights that will cause that dreaded green flare. One thing I noticed is if you use the ultra wide, it does seem to minimize it more than the other two. Now, another way to eliminate it, and this isn't really a reality for most people, and that is to use a DOF adapter. If you use a DOF adapter and you put a traditional photo lens on the actual adapter, then the way the optics work, the green flares, the green dot flares seem to go away. Now, using external lenses, like again from ShiftCam or B-Script, that doesn't really seem to fix it. It may help a little bit, but really the only way to get rid of it completely is using a DOF adapter and photo lenses. But again, that's not a reality for most people. But right now, we're really at the mercy of Apple until they get rid of it. These are the most annoying video issues for me right now on the iPhone, but what about you? Let me know in the comments below, what did I miss? What did I forget? And as I mentioned at the beginning, overall, iPhones are great, so I don't want to be complaining. I just want to make them better. But as I often say, it's a great time to be a filmmaker. It's really amazing what we can shoot, what we can do with the phone we carry in our pocket. Thanks for watching. This is Blake Calhoun. Please like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.